So this upstreaming program was really about a shift in culture from being reactive to preventative, to actually move away from removing content to that real preventative work.
Hi, and welcome back to the Tech Terror Takedown podcast, where we delve into the pressing issues at the intersection of technology, public safety, and counter-terrorism. I'm your host, Sophia Rothud, a researcher at LMU Munich working on the EU-funded TAPE project. Today, we're exploring how collaboration between law enforcement and tech companies is evolving to tackle online harms more effectively. This is such a critical and timely topic, given the evolving challenges posed by terrorist actors on the internet, terrorist content, and other types of online threats. I'm thrilled to be joined by Andrew Staniforth, a director of SAHER Europe. Andrew brings a wealth of experience to today's discussion, having served as an operational police officer for 25 years with a specialization in counter-terrorism. Andrew has worked across 22 countries and supported missions of the United Nations Terrorism Prevention Branch. He's not only a practitioner, but also an educator, having designed international security exercise programs and held academic positions at security research institutes. With this background, he is coordinating several European projects, such as TATE. Andrew, it's great to have you on the podcast today. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here, Sophia. Thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to it.
In a recent study that you conducted with Professor Stuart MacDonald, whom we also had on the podcast recently, you found a shift towards more collaborative efforts between law enforcement and tech companies. What has been driving this change?
Well, that's a great question to kick off. Yes, it was a piece of research that Professor Stuart MacDonald and myself progressed with the Cyber Threats Research Centre at Swansea University. I was always interested from my counter-terrorism role how counter-terrorism policing interacts with partners, because one thing is quite clear when you're in the role of counter-terrorism is that you cannot do it alone. So you need to work collaboratively and cooperatively with your partners. Now, because terrorism has become increasingly non-physical and threats emerge online, it means that policing across the world has had to change the way it develops its relationships with partners in order to meet its goals. None more so than key relationships with technology companies, host service providers that provide platforms and services on social media and others that terrorist organizations, groups, and extremists are infiltrating to promote their propaganda, to recruit, and to radicalize. So that relationship between the public authorities, law enforcement agencies, and private sector has always interested me, because actually they are very, very different culturally. They are seeking different outcomes, but yet at the same time, the police are trying to prevent and detect terrorist activity online. And I've never met a host service provider or a CEO of a company that welcomes harmful terrorist content on their website or on their platforms. So there are synergies between those two very different emanations of state power and commercial power that really need to work together. So I've been really interested in how that works. And this piece of research was fascinating because we conducted 21 interviews over a period of 12 to 18 months. 10 of those were from law enforcement agencies, so counter-terrorism officers. Those officers engaged really at the front line of tackling online terrorism at counter-terrorism internet referral units in the UK and in Europe. We interviewed 5 technology companies, 3 NGOs, and also 3 specialist experts. And it was fascinating from that particular piece of research that what we found. I think first and foremost, the key thing, and really in answer to the first question, was that there was a common and shared understanding that this threat needed to be tackled, that they needed to work more closely together, they needed to work more efficiently together and to help each other out and to be more cooperative and collaborative. Now, how that works in reality is a separate question. But I think what we found straight away, there was this real common understanding that they both shared and that, in essence, they wanted to achieve the same thing. So that was great to hear from the very start.
Based on your study's results, what do you see as the primary challenges and concerns that law enforcement and tech companies face when working together?
Well, the primary challenges are their competing priorities and different cultures. We investigated at length the aims and objectives of counter-terrorism police officers and the pressures brought by technology companies to make profits, to expand and to grow. But it also seemed that there were some synergies in there that they would be able to really both hang on to and work with. And one of the key aspects that we found was that they were really happy to work more closely together. What had happened over time was there was personal and professional relationships being built up by key individuals within counter-terrorism policing units, with key individuals at social media companies, for example, when they had requests to take terrorist content down. And those relationships that had been built up over time started to work. Technology companies started to understand that they had a moral, ethical, and increasingly legal regulatory duty to help protect their customers, users online. Counterterrorism departments were also seeking to protect the public, to make the internet as safe and secure as possible. And actually, one of the things that we found was that it wasn't necessarily that technology companies welcomed or disliked regulation, or that police officers and those counterterrorism units welcomed or liked legislation. I think there was a real concern that the practical approach to getting things done, to solving things, may be frustrated by the introduction of regulation. So instead of these two professionals speaking to each other quite freely and openly, discussing the removal of terrorist content and the challenges and working through and solving problems together, would potentially be removed by increased legislation and regulation, that it would first go to a team of lawyers and therefore another filter that would frustrate matters. But one thing that they both came up with was, in future, that they'd really like to experiment with more experience exchange programs. And what they meant by that was actually embedding some counterterrorism officers within tech companies, so that they gained a greater understanding of the commercial pressures and the tools and the systems that they were using. And also at the same time, a mutual exchange where you would have personnel and employees of tech companies that would be embedded within intelligence units and functions within a counter-terrorism department, so that they could also get to understand the very difficult decisions, pressures and priorities that are brought to bear on counter-terrorism police officers and staff every day. And it seems that experience exchange program was something that was really practical. It wouldn't cost a lot of money, would not take a lot of organisation, but would be something that would be mutually beneficial for both of them. And that was a key finding of our research, which was great to see.
It sounds extremely valuable that, as you said, law enforcement and tech companies reported that they were very happy to collaborate on this matter and mutually exchanged. Furthering these findings, Stuart and you also derived recommendations on how to enhance cooperation even more. Could you share these suggestions with us?
Yes, absolutely. The recommendations were published in a report which is entitled Tackling Online Terrorist Content Together, Cooperation Between Law Enforcement and Technology Companies. And it was published in January of 2023 by GNET, the Global Network on Extremism and Technology. And actually, one of the key recommendations was for counter-terrorism policing to actually develop a takedown and shut down counter-terrorism policing protocol. What the technology companies were saying, well, actually, sometimes the requests there seemed to be a mismatch. Sometimes the priority they considered was not correct. And actually, what they wanted to see from policing was a real move towards a more standardized, agreed, common process and a protocol that could be understood not just by one tech company or host service provider, but understood by them all. So we'll provide that, I suppose, level playing field and clear understanding of what was expected. We also found from the policing departments that they really wanted to see from tech companies a move, what they called an upstreaming program. The great irony was that they both placed upon each other new programs and protocols to work through. But the police officers and staff and analysts in these units were saying that actually it would be great for them to move towards an upstreaming program, which meant that they wanted to move from simply removal to prevention. Now, that is really fascinating because the whole ethos of counterterrorism work, both the more kinetic physical work and the online work, needs to be intelligence-led, which means that it needs to be preventative. So getting a better understanding of the threat landscape, the intelligence, the structures of both organizations would really help. So this upstreaming program was really about a shift in culture from being reactive to preventative, to actually move away from actually just removing content because they knew that it would be uploaded and replaced somewhere else moments later, to that real preventative work. And that was fascinating to see.
Finally, let's get even more practical. From your research, what steps can be taken to foster a deeper understanding between both law enforcement and tech companies, considering their different cultures and goals?
Well, it is a real challenge and they both have different pressures. But as we said before, actually, they probably have found that they have more in common than they have which separates them. And one of the issues that they both mentioned was that they'd like to engage more in research so that they could work more together collaboratively, cooperatively in the safe learning environment of research. And one of the key recommendations of the report suggested that they should both come up with a set of strategic research requirements. So in essence, they will both go away, have a think about the real issues and the real challenges that they wanted to resolve individually, and then come back and combine their research requirements and to build this kind of plan of research issues that they wanted to address, problems that they wanted to address, and then seek grant funding or find funding from tech companies to have a look at how they could work on those together. So thereby not impacting upon their day-to-day operational demands, but a way in which they could move towards closer collaboration. And actually, we're starting to see this with the likes of the Global Network on Extremism and Technology. We're starting to see this with GIFT CT as well being established, looking at research, seeking to engage those practical end-user partners so that they become part of the research, which is essential for the outcomes to have real impact. And it is our hope that those strategic research requirements will really come to fruition and really start to help build a better relationship between those two major assets of policing and tech companies that really have the power to make a difference and will be stronger when they work together in tackling the contemporary terrorist online threat.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing your insights with us today. It's been very interesting to hear how successful collaboration between law enforcement and tech companies in tackling harmful online content can look like. From the challenges of different priorities and different cultures to the importance of building mutual understanding and adopting innovative approaches, this discussion has highlighted both the complexities and the opportunities in this vital area. For our listeners, today's conversation underscored the necessity of research and also of cooperation in jointly combating online threats. The findings discussed today, from improved communication to leveraging preventative approaches, are steps that can make a real difference. If you're interested in exploring these topics further, don't forget to check out Andrew's and Stuart's GNet study linked in our show notes. Thank you again for tuning in. We'll hear us again next time with our final episode, in which we navigate the European regulatory landscape to counter harmful content online, from the Digital Services Act to the TCO regulation. Until then, stay safe everyone. Goodbye.